My brother visited and saw my empty house. Sister, why are you starving with an $8,000 pension? He said, standing in my kitchen doorway with that heavy, disappointed look only an older brother can give. His voice filled the silence, bouncing off the walls that used to hold laughter and Sunday dinners. The air inside that house felt cold, not because the heater was broken, though it was, but because it felt like all the warmth had been taken out of it. The pots were empty. The pantry shelves looked like the ribs of a hungry child, and I just stood there, my hands still wet from washing the same two dishes I had used for weeks. Before I could open my mouth, before I could even swallow the lump that sat in my throat, my son walked in. He had that bold stride, the same one he used to have when he came home from college with his chest out and his head high. But this time, it was not pride from achievement. It was arrogance. He looked around the room like he owned it. Then he laughed, just a little, and said, "Uncle Joe, you do not have to worry about Mama. I gave all the money from my mother to my wife. She handles everything now." You could have heard a pin drop. My brother's eyes narrowed, and the guests who had come for Sunday supper froze with their forks halfway to their mouths. My son smiled, proud of what he thought was responsibility. My daughter-in-law, Denise, stood behind him with that polite little grin, pretending she did not hear the shock spreading across the room. I felt the room tilt. My fingers gripped the edge of the sink. My brother, Joe, took one slow step forward. "You did what, boy?" he asked, his voice calm but sharp as a knife. My son shrugged. "Mama's pension, her checks, all that stuff. It is safer with us. Denise knows how to manage money better than Mama does." He said it like I was a child, like the years I spent working double shifts at the laundry, saving every dime to raise him alone after his father died, meant nothing. My brother turned toward me. "Clara," he said softly, "is that true?" I could not answer. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, family, neighbors, even the pastor's wife who had stopped by after church. My face burned hot. My brother looked around the room, his jaw tightening. "You sitting here with an empty refrigerator, your lights about to go off, and this boy standing proud telling the world he took your money?" Denise stepped in quickly. "Now, Uncle Joe, please do not misunderstand. We are helping her. It is just easier for us to handle her payments. She forgets things sometimes." I wanted to shout, to tell her I was not forgetting a thing, that I had noticed every dollar missing, every bill handled that never seemed to get paid. But the words stuck inside me like stones. I looked at my son, my baby, the boy who once cried because I missed his school play, the one I nursed through fevers and prayed for every night. I searched his face for the kindness I once knew. All I saw was pride. My brother's hands curled into fists at his sides. "You mean to tell me," he said slowly, "you let your mama sit here hungry while you're out there living on her pension?" My son laughed, awkwardly. "Uncle Joe, please. It is not like that. We make sure she has what she needs. Right, Mama?" The room went quiet again. Everyone waited for me to say something, to defend him, to speak truth. But my throat closed up, and I could only nod a little. Not because I agreed, but because I was ashamed. Ashamed that I had raised a man who thought stealing from his mother was something to brag about. My brother stepped back, shaking his head. I drove for hours to check on my baby sister. I expected to see her smiling, not starving. Denise smiled, but it was that cold, tight smile people give when they want the moment to pass. "We will talk about this later, Uncle Joe. Let us not make a scene." He glared at her. A scene already been made. I wanted to stop him. I wanted to tell him not to start something in front of everybody. But inside me, there was a strange relief. Like someone was finally seeing what I had been too afraid to speak. My son pulled out a chair, still acting unbothered. Mama, you know how folks like to twist things. Tell him we are fine. But I could not say it. My tongue felt heavy. I looked down at my hands, rough and tired from years of scrubbing and folding other people's clothes. I whispered, "Son, what did you do with the money?" He frowned, almost annoyed. "I told you, Mama. Denise and I are using it to pay the house off, to invest. It is for the family. The family." My brother barked out a bitter laugh. "Whose family? Hers or yours?" Denise's smile faded. "You have no right to question our decisions." That was when Joe's face turned hard. "I got every right when my sister's sitting in an empty house with unpaid bills. You call that taking care of her?" The guests had stopped eating. Nobody moved. Even the clock on the wall seemed to tick louder. I felt the tears finally rise. My voice shook when I said, "Joe, please, do not." But he would not stop. "You listen to me, boy. That woman gave you her whole life. She buried your daddy alone. She worked herself half to death so you could get that degree. And this is how you repay her?" My son's voice dropped, defensive now. "You do not understand how things are, Uncle Joe. Times are different. We are just managing things better. Mama cannot handle money like she used to." Those words cut deeper than any knife. My own son was calling me incapable. Joe turned to me again. "Clara, tell me he is lying." I looked at him, then at my son, and the truth hung heavy between us. My silence said everything. My brother took off his coat slowly, folded it over the chair, and said in a low voice, "Then I reckon we are about to have a conversation." Denise grabbed her husband's arm. "Do not start, Joe, please." But Joe did not move toward her. He moved toward me, placed his hand on my shoulder, and whispered, "You do not have to be quiet anymore, little sister." And in that moment, all the years of pretending everything was fine came crashing down. The guests began whispering, uncomfortable. Denise tried to laugh it off, but her voice cracked. My son looked from me to his uncle, realizing too late that he had said too much. The house that had always been filled with warmth now felt colder than ever. That was the day my brother's eyes opened, and my son's pride started digging its own grave. Because from that Sunday forward, nothing in our family would ever be the same again. And deep down, I knew the shame at my own table was only the beginning of what was coming next. That night after everyone left, the house felt too quiet. The air hung thick with shame and sorrow. My brother had gone back to his motel, saying he would sleep on it. But I knew him. Joe never slept when something bothered him. He was the kind of man who carried his anger like a Bible close to his chest, and always ready to open it. I sat at the kitchen table for a long while, staring at the empty teacup in front of me. My hands trembled as I traced the chipped rim. That cup had been with me for 20 years. Through storms and long mornings when I thought I would never see the sun again. It was all I had left that still felt like mine. I thought about how it all began, how love had turned into ownership, how my own child became the man who looked at me like I was a burden. You see, when my husband, Henry, passed, I was 42. My boy, Michael, had just turned 16. Henry worked at the steel mill, and when the accident happened, the company gave us a small settlement enough to cover the funeral and keep the lights on for a while. I remember sitting on that porch, holding the check in my hand, praying to God to show me how to raise a son on my own. I promised myself Michael would never go without. So, I worked. Lord, I worked. I took every shift they would give me at Miss Lillian's laundry downtown. I ironed until my fingers cracked. I took in sewing on weekends, cleaned houses when folks went on vacation. I used to hum to keep from crying when the nights got long. And every penny went to that boy. New shoes for school, extra books, even a used laptop when he got into college. When he graduated, I thought, this is it. My baby made it. He was the first in our family to get a degree. I remember standing in that gymnasium, wearing my best dress, clapping till my palms ached. He hugged me tight and said, "Mama, I am going to take care of you now." I believed him. After graduation, he moved back home for a while, and things were fine, peaceful. Even, he got a good job at the bank, wore his daddy's old cufflinks, and I felt proud every time I saw him in that suit. Then, one summer, he brought home a girl, Denise. Now, at first, I liked her. She had a nice smile, soft voice, and she was polite. She brought me flowers that first Sunday dinner and helped clear the table afterward. I thought, Lord, maybe this is my daughter I never had. But there was something in her eyes, something small, quick, like a shadow that moved when you were not looking. Denise started visiting more, cooking meals, organizing things. She would say, "Mama Clara, let me handle your mail. I will make sure your bills are on time." I thought it was kindness. I let her. One day, she told me, "You should not worry about all these bank letters. Michael can set up automatic payments. You will not have to lift a finger." It sounded good. I was tired of writing checks and waiting in line at the post office. So, I handed over my checkbook and my bank card. "You are family now," I said. "I trust you." That was my mistake. After they married, they moved out but said they would still handle things. I did not think much of it. I was just glad my son had a family of his own. I wanted to believe that love would make us stronger, not weaker. But soon, little things started changing. When I went to the grocery store, my card declined. Denise told me the bank had switched systems. When I called, Michael said, "Mama, you do not need to worry about all that. I am managing your pension now." I asked him once, "Michael, how much is in my account?" He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "Enough, Mama, always enough." But when I looked in the fridge, I saw nothing but a jar of pickles and a carton of milk. Then the lights went off one night. I called him crying. He said, "Mama, I told you not to stress. I will fix it." And he did, the next day. But something about the way he said it made me feel small, like I was some helpless old woman who could not be trusted with her own life. That feeling grew every time he came around. He stopped calling me Mama and started calling me Ma'am. Denise started answering my calls instead of him, and when she spoke, her voice had this softness that felt rehearsed. "Do not worry, Mama Clara," she would say. "We are taking care of everything." But the house kept getting emptier. I sold my old sewing machine to pay for medicine. I started skipping meals to make food last longer. My neighbors began to notice. Miss Irene from next door brought me soup one afternoon and whispered, "You all right, Clara? You look thin." I smiled and said I was fine, because pride is a stubborn thing. Then came the holidays. Every year, my brother Joe would drive from Montgomery to spend Christmas with me. But that year, Denise told him, "Mama Clara is not feeling up to company." I never knew she said it until months later. Joe stopped calling as much, thinking I was the one avoiding him. Denise had built a wall around me, and I did not even see it go up. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit on the porch with a blanket wrapped around me, looking up at the sky, wondering when my boy stopped being my boy. I tried to talk to him once about the money. I said, "Michael, I want to see my pension statements. I want to know where things stand." He looked at me like I had insulted him. "Mama, do you not trust me?" I said softly, "I trust you, but I also need to know." He got quiet, then smiled. "You raised me better than to lie to you." And I wanted to believe that. God help me. I wanted to believe every word. But the truth was creeping in, slow and quiet, like water seeping through a crack in the wall. The night before Joe's visit, I sat on my bed and tried to make sense of my life. I thought of all the years I gave, all the love, all the sacrifices. I realized I had not bought a new dress in 5 years. My hands ached from cold because I would not turn the heat onto high. And the hardest part was not the hunger, or the dark, or even the loneliness. It was knowing that the people I trusted most, the ones who said they loved me, had taken more than just my money. They took my peace. They took the sound of my laughter. They took the feeling that my home was mine. When my brother Joe walked through that door the next day and saw my kitchen bare, he saw the truth I had been hiding. He saw what they took from me, and though I did not know it yet, his visit was about to change everything. Because Joe was not the kind of man who could see injustice and walk away. He had the same fire Daddy used to have, the kind that burns quiet until it finds air. And the moment my son said those proud words in front of him, that fire found all the air it needed. After that Sunday, nothing in the house felt the same. The days grew longer, and the silence heavier. My son stopped coming by as often, and when he did, he came with Denise. Always with Denise, never alone. It was as if he needed her there to keep him standing tall, to make sure no truth slipped out of his mouth by mistake. My brother Joe called every morning for a week after that argument, asking if I was all right. I told him I was fine, that everything had settled down. But that was a lie. The truth was, the calm that followed wasn't peace. It was distance. The kind of quiet that feels like a goodbye you haven't said yet. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and walk through the house, just to hear the floor creak under my feet, to remind myself I was still here. My old clock ticked slow on the wall, and I'd sit by the window, watching the streetlights flicker. The world went on like nothing had happened, but inside me, something was breaking in tiny, silent pieces. A week after that dinner, Denise called. Not my son, Denise. "Hi, Mama Clara," she said in that careful, sugar-sweet tone. "We think it's best if you let us handle all your mail and bills from now on. Things have gotten too stressful for you lately." I gripped the phone tighter. "I have been handling my business my whole life," I said softly. "You do not need to worry about me." She paused. "We're not worried, Mama Clara. We just don't want you overwhelmed. You deserve rest." Rest. That word stung. When people tell older folks to rest, what they mean is stop. Stop asking questions. Stop living your life. Stop existing in their way. I said, "I will think about it," and hung up before she could say more. Later that evening, my son showed up. No smile, no warmth. He just stood in the doorway, his hands in his pockets. "Mama," he said, "why did you hang up on Denise like that?" I did not hang up, I told him. I ended the call. He sighed, shaking his head. "You're making things harder than they have to be. We're trying to help." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, I saw a stranger wearing my son's face. His shoulders looked broader, his tone colder. The boy who once used to laugh with me in the kitchen was gone. Help, I asked quietly. You think taking over my money and my mail is helping? He rubbed his forehead. Mama, please don't start. You know how you get. How I get? I repeated. And how is that, Michael? He hesitated, then said, emotional, forgetful. It's okay, Mama. It happens at your age. I felt that like a slap. My age. He stepped closer. Denise and I are just thinking about your future. You don't need to stress about bills or statements. Just live easy, Mama. That's all we want. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that worked every job that put food in his mouth. And I thought about all the ways love can twist itself until it looks like control. Michael, I said quietly, when I raised you, I did not need nobody to manage me. I was enough. I still am. He smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. You'll thank us later. Then he left, closing the door behind him, and that door sounded heavier than it had ever sounded before. The next few weeks passed in that same quiet distance. My brother Joe tried to visit again, but Michael told him I wasn't feeling well. When Joe called, Denise answered my phone and said I was resting. Sometimes, I could hear her voice through the walls when she stopped by, whispering into the phone, talking about me like I wasn't even there. I started keeping a notebook, small, blue, with flowers on the cover. I wrote down everything, the dates, the times they came, what they said, how much was left in my wallet after they left. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about proof. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. Proof that I still knew what was happening. The neighbors started asking questions too. Miss Irene came by with a bag of groceries one afternoon. You ain't been out much lately, Clara, she said, handing me a loaf of bread. Everything all right with that son of yours? I forced a smile. He's fine. They're busy with work. She frowned. Busy ain't the same as gone. You used to talk about that boy like he was gold. I nodded. He was. But gold tarnishes too, I thought. One night, I heard their voices through the open window. Michael's car was parked out front, engine running. Denise was in the passenger seat. They were arguing, low and fierce. She's going to start asking questions again, Denise said. I told you to close that account. I did. Michael snapped. But Uncle Joe's sniffing around. He won't stop calling. Well, handle it, she hissed. Before he finds out where the money went. I froze. My heart beat so loud I could hear it in my ears. Do not worry, Michael said finally. I got this. Mama trusts me. Then they drove off into the night, their headlights disappearing down the road. I sat there for hours, clutching the edge of the curtain, shaking. The truth wasn't whispering anymore. It was screaming. From that night on, I stopped answering their calls. I unplugged the phone when it rang too much. I cooked little meals for myself, careful and quiet, like a woman in hiding. And in those long, still evenings, I began to understand something I hadn't wanted to see. Love without respect isn't love at all. It's ownership wrapped in guilt. But I also knew something else. My brother wasn't done. Joe might have been silent, but I could feel the storm building in his bones. The way he looked at me that Sunday, the promise in his eyes. He wasn't going to let this go. He'd been patient all his life, but patience runs out when blood is being stolen. And I had a feeling that before long, that quiet distance between my brother and my son was going to explode into something none of us could control. It was a strange kind of peace that came after those weeks of silence. The kind that made you uneasy, like sitting on a porch before a storm you could smell but not see yet. Michael and Denise started visiting again, but this time they acted sweeter than ever. They brought groceries, flowers, even candles. Denise baked me a pie, said it was from the heart. Michael fixed the leaky faucet, replaced a light bulb, talked about the weather. Everything they did was neat, careful, and smooth. It was the kind of calm that felt rehearsed. One Sunday morning, they came over all dressed up for church. Denise had on a white dress that looked expensive, and Michael wore a suit that didn't come from any local store I knew. "Good morning, Mama," Denise said, kissing my cheek. "We thought we would come pray with you today." I smiled politely, though I could feel my stomach twist. "You both look nice," I said. Michael laughed softly. "We have been blessed lately, Mama. Things are turning around for us." Blessed. That word rang wrong in my ears, because I knew blessings didn't come from the sweat of someone else's brow. After church, they stayed for dinner. Denise talked about how they might buy a second car, how she was thinking about opening a small boutique. Michael nodded proudly, cutting into his roast. "We are planning smart," he said. "Got some good investments." I stared at them across the table. The smell of the food thickened the air. I wanted to ask where that money came from, but my voice would not form the words. I had learned something about them. They didn't need to be loud to take things from you. They could do it with smiles. Later that afternoon, after they left, I walked into my bedroom and opened my drawer. The little blue notebook was still there, safe beneath my Bible. I wrote the date, what they said, what they wore, what they ate. It had become a habit, a way of keeping my sanity. A few days later, my brother Joe called again. "Clara," he said, "you still got that pension letter from the bank?" "Yes," I said quietly. "Why?" "Because something about all this don't sit right with me," he said. "I went to the bank last week, asked about Mama's old account. They said it was closed months ago." I felt my heart skip. "Closed?" "Yeah," he said. "And I remember you telling me Michael handled it. I think you need to come with me, little sister. We are going to check some things together." I hesitated. "Joe, you know how he gets when folks interfere." He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Let him get. I am done letting this go." I agreed to meet him that Friday, but by Thursday night, Denise showed up unexpectedly. She said she was just dropping by to check on me, but her eyes were nervous, darting around the room like a cat who smelled danger. She brought me some groceries, things I hadn't asked for, and sat down on the couch, smiling too wide. "Mama Clara," she started, "I hope you know we love you." I nodded. "I know. And we would never do anything to hurt you." "I know," I said again. She leaned forward. "Michael has been under a lot of stress. You know how men are. He just wants to protect you, even if it doesn't always come out right." I looked at her, studying that smooth face that never seemed to show truth. "You think taking my money is protection?" Her eyes flickered, but she didn't lose her smile. "It's all family, Mama Clara. What's yours is his, and what's his is yours. That's how family works," I said softly. "Then why does it feel like everything that's mine disappeared?" For a second, she didn't answer. She just looked down at her purse, fiddling with the zipper. Then she stood up, forcing a laugh. "You're tired. I shouldn't have come so late." I watched her leave, my heart thudding in my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, wrapped in my shawl, watching the rain fall on the streetlights. Somewhere in the distance, Thunder rolled low. I thought of all the years I believed in goodness. How I thought love would always come back to me if I gave it freely. But some people don't return love. They consume it, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but your shadow. The next morning, Joe showed up early. He knocked on the door, his hat dripping wet. "Get your coat," he said. "We're going." We went to the bank together. The teller, a young woman with kind eyes, looked at the computer and frowned. "Mrs. Johnson, your account was transferred 6 months ago," she said. "All payments now go to a joint account under Michael and Denise Johnson." My stomach dropped. "A joint account?" She nodded. "It lists both your names too, but only theirs have full access." Joe leaned on the counter, his voice low. "How much money we talking about?" She hesitated, glanced at me. "Almost $80,000 in total deposits. But the balance is under 200 now." I felt dizzy. The room spun. I gripped the counter to stay upright. Joe turned to me, his face like stone. "You see what they done, Clara. They cleaned you out." I whispered. "He told me it was for the family." "For me." Joe shook his head. "That boy's been poisoned. Ain't no other way to see it." We left the bank in silence. The rain had stopped, but the streets were slick and gray. When we got to my porch, Joe turned to me. "You want me to handle this, or you want to?" I looked out at the yard, at the little patch of roses Henry planted before he died. The petals were drooping, heavy with rain. "Let me talk to him first," I said. Joe nodded slowly, though I could see the anger trembling behind his calm. "You got till Sunday, Clara. After that, I'm stepping in." When he left, I sat on the porch for a long while. The world felt small. My house, my money, my trust, all gone, quietly, while I was looking the other way. That evening, my son called. "Hey, Mama," he said, cheerful, almost too cheerful. "Just checking in. Everything good?" I swallowed hard. "I went to the bank today." The line went silent for a second. Then his voice lowered. "Why'd you do that?" "Because I wanted to see for myself," I said. "I wanted to see what was left of me." He sighed. "Mama, we talked about this. You weren't supposed to worry about it." "I wasn't supposed to worry," I said softly, "because you already spent it." He didn't answer. I could hear Denise whispering in the background. Then he said, "We'll come by tomorrow. We'll explain everything." But I already knew. Some truths don't need explaining. When I hung up, I looked around my living room. The flowers they brought last week were already wilting. The pie plate sat empty on the counter. Everything they gave me came with an expiration date. And for the first time in my life, I felt something colder than sadness. I felt still. The kind of still that comes right before something breaks. Because I knew that when they came back tomorrow, I would not be the quiet mother anymore. I would be the woman who finally saw through the calm to the ruin waiting behind it. The morning they came, the air felt heavy, not stormy, just thick, like the world itself was holding its breath. I'd been up since before dawn, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee that had gone cold hours ago. My Bible lay open, not for reading this time, but because my shaking hands needed something familiar to rest on. When the knock finally came, it wasn't gentle. 3 sharp raps, the kind of knock that didn't ask permission to enter. I didn't get up right away. I wanted them to wait. Let them stand outside in their Sunday clothes and false smiles. "Ma," Michael called. "It's me. Open up." I took my time walking to the door. When I opened it, there they were, Michael in his clean white shirt, Denise behind him with her purse clutched close. She was smiling that same careful smile, but her eyes were restless. "Morning, Mama," she said. "Can we come in?" I nodded once and stepped aside. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the old wall clock. They sat down at the kitchen table, like it was their home. Michael leaned back in the chair, arms crossed. Denise folded her hands in her lap, waiting. "You went to the bank," Michael said. "I did." He nodded slowly, jaw tight. "You shouldn't have done that." "I shouldn't have." I asked softly. "Michael, that's my account. My name on it." He rubbed his forehead. "Mama, we talked about this. We've been helping you manage things. You said you didn't want to worry about bills, about taxes. I didn't ask you to take from me." I cut in. Denise spoke then, her voice smooth like syrup. "Mama Clara, please don't make this bigger than it needs to be. We were using some of it for the family. Investments, things to help all of us down the line." I looked at her, that calm tone, that fake concern. I'd seen that same performance too many times. "You mean for you to down the line?" I said. Michael sighed. "Mama, you're misunderstanding. I wouldn't steal from you." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "You already did." For a moment, the room went silent. Denise looked away. Michael's eyes hardened, that same glint I used to see when he was a boy lying about something small, before guilt turned to habit. "You think I'm a thief," he said. "I think you're lost," I said. "And she's leading you deeper into it." Denise flinched. "That's not fair." I turned to her. "Fair? You came into my home, smiled at my face, and helped empty my life savings. You call that fair?" She straightened her back. "We did what needed to be done. You're old, Mama Clara. You don't know how to handle money anymore. We were just trying to make sure you didn't get taken advantage of." The irony of her words almost made me laugh. Almost. "And who's taking advantage of me now?" I said, my voice low. Michael stood up suddenly, the chair scraping hard against the floor. "You don't talk to her like that," he snapped. I rose too, my heart pounding but my face still calm. "Then maybe you should start listening instead of defending a lie." He took a step closer, his eyes burning. "We're your family. Everything we've done is for you. Family doesn't drain your bank dry and call it love," I said. He clenched his fists, then turned away, pacing. Denise stood up too, her voice trembling. "We'll fix this, okay? We'll move some of the money back. Just don't bring other people into it. Don't call your brother. Don't call the police." That's when I knew. I hadn't told them about Joe, but she just did. I felt my stomach twist. "How do you know I talked to Joe?" Denise froze. Michael looked at her sharply. "What?" She hesitated, then tried to recover. "You said you might." "I never told you that," I interrupted. "Not either of you." Michael turned on her, eyes narrowing. "You've been talking to him behind my back." Denise's face flushed. No, I just heard liar." He spat, and there it was. The first crack. The first real one. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the air itself had gone thin. I saw in that moment what I hadn't wanted to before. Their unity wasn't love. It was fear and greed stitched together. And when fear gets tested, it unravels fast. "Both of you need to go," I said. Michael turned to me. "Mama, don't do this. You've already done it," I said quietly. "Now leave my house." He stared at me, not with sorrow, but with something darker, a look I'd seen in men who'd already chosen their side. "You think you can just throw us out?" he said. "After everything?" "After everything, yes." Denise touched his arm. "Michael, let's go." He didn't move. Not till she understands. I understand plenty, I said. And if that money doesn't come back by Sunday, the police will understand too. That word, police, hung heavy in the air. Denise's face went pale. Michael's jaw tightened. Finally, he said through his teeth, "You'd call the cops on your own son?" I looked straight at him. "If that's what it takes to make you remember you are my son, yes." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then he turned, grabbed his jacket, and stormed out. The door slammed so hard the picture frames rattled. Denise lingered for a second at the doorway. Her voice was small, almost human again. "You don't understand him, Mama Clara. He's just scared," I said. "So am I." Then she left too. When the silence came back, it felt heavier than before. I sank into the chair, my hands trembling. The ticking of the wall clock sounded like a hammer against the air. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't pray. I just sat there, thinking about the boy I'd raised, the one who used to pick flowers for me on Mother's Day, who'd cry when he broke something because he didn't want to disappoint me. Somewhere between then and now, that boy died, and I hadn't even noticed when it happened. Before going to bed, I opened my blue notebook again. On the top of the page, I wrote in slow, careful letters, "The first betrayal doesn't come with anger. It comes with quiet lies dressed up as care." Then I closed it and whispered, "Lord, give me strength for what comes next." Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. This was just the beginning of the war for my soul, my home, and whatever little peace I had left. And somewhere out there in the dark, Michael and Denise were planning their next move. The days after that Sunday felt long and hollow, like time itself had slowed down to punish me. Every sound in the house echoed, the creak of the stairs, the hum of the refrigerator, even the wind brushing against the window. It was as if the house knew something sacred had been broken inside it. I tried to keep my routines. Morning coffee, watering my plants, sitting by the window to read. But my heart wasn't in it anymore. I was watching everything, listening for every car that passed by, wondering if it was Michael coming back. He didn't come. Not that day. Not the next one either. But Denise did. She arrived 3 days later, unannounced, in that silver car she loved so much. When I saw her step out, dressed to fine for a simple visit, I already knew trouble had followed her up the driveway. She knocked gently this time. No sharp raps, no authority in her tone. Just a soft, careful tap like she was pretending to be harmless. I opened the door. "What do you want, Denise?" She smiled. Not wide, not warm, just enough to show she had practiced it in the mirror. "I came to check on you, Mama Clara. We haven't seen you since Sunday. Michael's been upset because he got caught?" I asked. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes flickered. "You misunderstand. He's not a bad man. He's just under pressure." I let out a tired sigh. "Pressure makes diamonds, child, not thieves." That made her blink. She stepped inside, uninvited, and looked around like she owned the place. "This house feels colder than I remember," she said softly. "Maybe you should come stay with us for a while. Get out of here, rest a little." I crossed my arms. "Rest where? In a home you bought with my money?" She turned slowly, eyes narrowing now, the sweetness gone. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "No, baby," I said, my voice steady. "You and Michael made this hard the moment you forgot who you were dealing with." That's when I saw it, that flash in her eyes. The mask dropped for just a second, and I saw who she really was. Cold, calculating, The kind of woman who could smile while taking everything you had. She leaned in a little, lowering her voice. Michael told me you threatened to call the police. That wouldn't be good for anyone, would it? I mean, people might start to think you're not in your right mind. I stared at her, the words sinking in like poison. You saying I'm crazy? She shrugged, pretending to be gentle again. I didn't say that. But if something like that gets written down, you know, for your safety, then the court might have to appoint someone to handle your finances. Just saying, Mama Clara. Sometimes it's better to let family take care of things before strangers do. That's when I realized what this really was. Not just betrayal. It was erasure. She wanted to make me invisible. A fragile old woman who couldn't be trusted with her own name. I took a step closer, so close I could see my reflection in her shiny earrings. Let me tell you something, Denise. I may be old, but I ain't weak. You think you can write me off like a bill? You go ahead and try, but you'll learn I still got fight left in these bones. For the first time, she looked uneasy. We're trying to help, she murmured again, almost out of habit. You keep calling it help, I said, but all I see is hunger. She turned away, pretending to fix her purse, and then said something that chilled me. Michael said he's done trying to make peace. He said if you want a fight, you'll get one. I froze. A fight? She nodded slowly. He's already spoken to some people about legal guardianship. You've been forgetting things lately, haven't you? My heart pounded. Forgetting things? Little things, she said sweetly. Bills, dates, conversations. I stepped back, feeling the floor tilt under my feet. You're trying to make me sound sick. Her voice softened. You don't have to see it that way. It's for your protection. Then she smiled again, that calm, cruel smile, and walked to the door. Michael will come by later this week. I'd suggest you be polite when he does. He still loves you, you know. When she left, I locked the door behind her and sank to the floor. Shaking for a long time, I didn't move, just sat there, my hand pressed against my chest, feeling my heart beat too fast. I could hear the echo of her words in my head. Guardianship, protection, not in your right mind. That night, I called Joe. I didn't even wait for him to say hello. They're trying to take everything, I whispered. Not just the money. They want my life. He went quiet for a second. Then his voice came through, calm but sharp. Pack a small bag, Clara. I'm coming over. No, I said. Not yet. If they see you here, they'll play nice and hide it. I need proof. He sighed heavily. You're playing a dangerous game. They started it, I said. I'm just learning the rules. After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. The night outside was quiet, too quiet. Every creak in the wood, every rustle of wind sounded like someone watching. When I finally went to bed, I couldn't sleep. My dreams were full of echoes. My son's laughter when he was small. The sound of coins clinking in a jar we used to save for Christmas, and Denise's voice whispering, "It's for your protection." I woke up in the middle of the night and went to my blue notebook. On a new page, I wrote, "The first time they take from you, it's money. The second time, it's your name. And after that, they come for your mind." My hands trembled as I put the pen down. I looked around my small kitchen, the home I built with my own hands, and realized that even the walls were starting to feel unsafe. This was no longer about family. This was war. Silent, polite, and deadly, and in that war, I was not the fragile old woman they thought I was. I was a mother, sharpened by loss, ready to protect what was left of her dignity. But still, deep in my chest. The pain of it all throbbed, because no matter how strong I tried to be, nothing hurt worse than realizing my own blood had turned into the enemy. And the worst part, the battle hadn't even started yet. By Friday morning, the air outside my window had changed. It wasn't just another day. You can feel it when something's about to break. That tightness in your chest, that hum beneath your skin. I woke up before the sun, made a pot of coffee I barely touched, and sat at the table waiting. I knew he was coming. Michael always came when he thought he had the upper hand. And Denise? She'd made sure he believed he did. The house was clean. Too clean. I'd been dusting all morning just to keep my hands busy. I didn't want him walking in here thinking I was frail or fading. I wanted him to see his mother, the same woman who worked 2 jobs, paid off a mortgage, and raised him without a single complaint. When the clock struck 10, his car pulled into the driveway. I didn't move to the door right away. I let him knock twice before opening it. He stood there in a press suit, holding a folder under his arm. He looked more like a banker than a son. "Mama," he said, voice steady, polite. "We need to talk." I stepped aside. "Then talk." He walked in, looked around, then sat at the kitchen table like it was a business meeting. The same table where he once used to color with crayons, where we used to pray before every meal. "I went to see a lawyer," he began. I didn't say anything. He placed the folder on the table and slid it toward me. "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "This is just to help. It's a guardianship agreement, temporary. Of course, just until we can straighten out your finances and make sure you're safe." I didn't touch the folder. I just stared at him. "Safe from what, Michael?" He hesitated. From mistakes. "You've been under a lot of stress lately. Forgetting things. Denise said you—" I cut him off. "Denise said?" He shifted in his seat. "She's been worried about you." I leaned forward, my voice low. "You mean she's been filling your head again?" "Mama, don't mama me," I said sharply. "You standing in my house, trying to hand me papers to make me a prisoner, and you call that love?" His face tightened. "It's not like that. You're twisting this." I shook my head slowly. "No, son, you're the one twisted. You've been listening to that woman so long you don't even recognize yourself anymore." He clenched his jaw. "You think I don't know what I'm doing? I'm protecting you. You're all I have left, Mama." "If that's protection," I said, "then what do you call stealing?" He slammed his hand on the table. The sound made the coffee cup tremble. "I didn't steal from you." The silence after that was thick. My heart was beating so loud I could feel it in my throat. I wanted to cry. Not from fear, but from grief. "You didn't have to, Michael," I whispered. "You just let her do it for you." He stood up, pacing the room like a caged man. "You don't understand, Mama. Denise just wants what's best for us. We've been behind on bills. The house needs repairs. We used that money for things we needed." "We?" I asked. "What do I have to do with any of that?" He stopped pacing. His shoulders dropped. "You're part of this family. Everything we do, it's for all of us." I stared at him, and for the first time, I didn't see my son at all. I saw a man so lost he didn't even know he was drowning. "You keep saying we," I said quietly, "but I don't see you and me in that word anymore. I see you and her." He turned his head away. "Mama, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just sign the papers. I'll take care of everything. You won't have to worry about a thing." I reached out slowly, laid my hand on the folder, and opened it. The words swam before my eyes: temporary guardianship, financial authority. Transfer of management rights. Every line was another knife. Did you read this? I asked. He hesitated. Denise did. She explained it. I closed the folder, pushed it back toward him, and stood up. Then take it back to her and tell her I said no. His face darkened. You can't keep doing this. Doing what? Fighting me. Then stop giving me a reason to fight. His voice rose. You think I like this? You think I want to argue with you every time I walk through this door? Then stop walking through it with lies in your hands, I said. He turned away from me, his fists clenched at his sides. When he finally spoke again, his voice was cold. You're gonna regret this, Mama. Maybe, I said quietly, but at least I'll regret it on my terms. That stopped him. He turned back, eyes burning. You'd rather lose everything than let me help. I already lost everything, I said. The moment I lost you. He stared at me for a long time, then said, You'll see. When it's all done, you'll thank me. I didn't answer. I just watched him walk to the door, open it, and pause. He turned his head slightly, without looking back. Uncle Joe's been asking questions. You better tell him to stay out of this. He doesn't know who he's dealing with. Then he left. The door shut softly this time. No slam, no anger. And somehow that made it worse. Quiet departures always do. I stood there for a long time, the sound of his footsteps fading down the path, and I felt something inside me shift. That was the moment I stopped hoping he'd come back to his senses. That was the moment I knew my son was gone. The real one. The one who used to run through the yard barefoot. The one who'd cry when I scraped my knee. And what was left behind was someone I didn't recognize. Later that evening, Joe came by. He didn't knock, just opened the door and called out, Clara, you all right? When he saw the papers on the table, he went still. He brought them, didn't he? I nodded. Joe picked up the folder, skimmed it, and his jaw tightened. He's crossed a line now. I know, I said softly. He looked at me then, eyes filled with that old protective fire I remembered from when we were kids. You leave him to me. Joe, no, he said. He needs to learn that blood don't give you permission to steal. He put the papers back down, carefully, like they were made of something toxic. You stay put tonight. Lock the doors. Don't open for nobody. And as he walked out into the night, I felt the storm finally move closer. Not just between mother and son anymore, but between brothers. Because now, Joe was in it. And my boy had no idea what kind of man he'd just gone up against. When the truth finally came, it did not come with thunder or yelling. It came quiet, like a whisper that froze the whole house. I had been sitting in the living room, the television on low, pretending to watch a cooking show I could not even hear. My hands were wrapped around my teacup, but the tea had long gone cold. The door opened, and in walked my brother Henry again. He had that look, the one that meant he had something to say, but was trying to find a gentle way to say it. He sat across from me without a word at first. The clock ticked louder than I ever noticed before. I looked up and said softly, You found something, didn't you, Henry? He just nodded, his lips pressed together. Then he said, Evelyn, I talked to the bank. I talked to the lawyer. I went through Mama's trust, your son. He transferred every last cent, all the savings, the house funds, even the pension transfers, straight into his wife's personal account. My hands began to shake so bad I had to put the cup down before I dropped it. I stared at him, trying to understand the words. My voice cracked when I asked, All of it? He nodded again. Every bit. He had the power of attorney when Mama passed, remember. He used that. He signed the papers, moved the money, closed the account. It's gone, Evelyn. All of it. The air in that room turned heavy. My heart started to pound slow, deep, almost painful beats in my chest. I could not even cry. I just sat there, hearing the echo of all those years. The laughter around Mama's table, the sacrifices, the love she poured into her grandchildren. And now, the last piece of her. Gone. I whispered, almost to myself. She trusted him, Henry. She trusted him with everything she worked for. Henry looked down, his jaw tightening. I know, baby sister, but he did wrong, and he needs to answer for it. The room fell into silence again. Outside, I could hear the faint hum of cars, the wind brushing against the window. My eyes drifted toward the photo frame sitting on the shelf. Me, my son, and his wife standing together at last year's Thanksgiving. I remembered how she had smiled that day, her hand resting on his arm like she owned him. Now I realized she had been owning everything. When I finally spoke again, my voice came out low but firm. Henry, I do not want to call the police. I just want to hear him say it, from his own mouth. I want him to tell me he took his grandmother's money and gave it away like it meant nothing. Henry sighed and nodded slowly. You sure you want that pain, Evelyn? Sometimes the truth is worse than the silence. But I was sure, because silence had already eaten too much of my soul. Later that evening, the house grew darker. I did not turn on the lights. I just sat there with the small lamp beside me, waiting. I heard their car pull up outside, my son and his wife. The sound of their laughter cut through the night air like a knife. They walked in, still smiling, carrying bags of groceries. She was wearing a new coat, beige wool with fur on the collar, the kind that did not come cheap. My son placed the bags on the counter and looked at me like everything was fine. Ma, we brought some dinner. Thought we'd eat together, he said, cheerful as ever. I did not move. I just looked at him, and I could tell, right there, that he knew. He felt it. That heavy, still air that only truth can bring. His smile faded slowly. Henry stepped out from the hallway behind me, and my son's face changed. His eyes darted between us. His wife stood frozen by the counter, holding her purse close to her body. Henry said it calm but sharp. She knows, boy. She knows about the money. Every bit of it. The silence that followed could have shattered glass. My son opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked like a little boy again, caught doing something he knew was wrong but could not fix. Finally, he said, Ma, I was going to tell you. I just needed time to explain. I stood up slowly. Explain what? How you took the money your grandmother saved for this family. How you and your wife spent it while I sat here counting coins to pay my bills. How you let your uncle see me starving in a house Mama built with her own hands. He flinched, eyes dropping to the floor. His wife stepped forward, her voice trembling. We did not mean harm, Mama Evelyn. We thought you did not need all of it. We just... Stop, I said softly. Do not call me Mama. You do not get to use that word while standing on stolen ground. The tears finally came, but they did not fall out of weakness. They came like fire, burning everything I thought I still believed about family. My son looked like he wanted to reach for me, but he could not move. Henry turned toward him. Do you even understand what you've done? You took her future. You took your grandmother's legacy. You took her pride. For the first time, I saw my son's eyes wet with guilt, but I could not tell if it was real remorse or fear of what came next. He whispered, I thought I was helping. We needed it. My wife lost her job. The bills. I cut him off. You should have come to me. You should have looked me in the eye and asked. I would have given you anything, son. But you chose to take, not ask. That is the difference between a man and a thief. The words hung there, heavy and final. His wife began to cry, her face buried in her hands. My son just stood there shaking. The house was so quiet that the sound of the refrigerator hum felt like thunder. Henry leaned close to him and said, "You got two choices, boy. You make this right, or you will lose every bit of what's left. Your home, your name, your mother's love." My son said nothing. His shoulders sagged. He looked broken, but I could not feel sorry for him anymore. Not tonight. That night, after they left, I sat back down at the same spot on the couch. The lamp still glowed softly beside me. My tea was cold again, but this time, the silence did not hurt. It felt like the beginning of something I needed to face. Because sometimes, when the truth finally comes out, it does not destroy you. It just shows you who has already been gone for a long time. And deep down, I knew this family would never be the same again. But the night was not over yet, for Henry had one more thing to tell me. Something that would make everything that happened tonight feel small, compared to what was coming next. The next morning came slow and heavy, the kind of morning where the light itself feels tired. I had barely slept. The night had been full of whispers from the past. My mother's voice, my son's laughter when he was a child, Henry's words echoing, "He needs to answer for it." The house was still quiet when I got up. The air was cool. I moved through each room slowly, touching the walls, the old photo frames, the lace curtains Mama had sewn herself. Everything felt different now, like the house itself had learned the truth and was grieving with me. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring into my cup of coffee, when Henry came back. He looked older than yesterday, his eyes carrying something heavy. He set his hat down on the counter and said, "Evelyn, there's more you need to know." I braced myself. My voice came out soft, steady. "What now, Henry?" He sighed deeply. "Your son's wife, she's been making withdrawals. Not small ones either. She's been sending money to her family down in Atlanta, her brother's business, her cousin's mortgage, even a car note. They've been living off your mother's savings like it's their own salary." My chest tightened. I leaned back in the chair, holding my breath for a moment. "So, it was never just him," I said quietly. "She used him, played him, and he let her." Henry nodded. "I hate to say it, but yes, he knew it, too. He just didn't want to see it. Love makes fools out of good men sometimes. But this," he shook his head, "this is betrayal dressed as love." I sat there, letting those words sink in. Betrayal dressed as love. It fit too well. That girl had smiled in my home, hugged me like I was her second mother, and all the while, she was counting my family's money in her head. I whispered, "Henry, do you ever wonder what Mama would say if she saw this?" He looked at me, his eyes soft. "She'd say what she always said. Evelyn, you cannot fix somebody who ain't ready to see themselves. But she'd also tell you not to let it poison your heart." I nodded slowly. But deep down, I knew something inside me had already changed. The woman I was before this, the one who believed family always came first, she was gone. Later that afternoon, my son came back. Alone this time. He stood at the door for a long time before knocking. I could see him through the screen, shoulders slumped, head down like a man carrying a world of shame. I let him in. He started talking before I could even say a word. "Ma," I told her to leave. I told her I wanted the money back, but she's gone. She took the car, took whatever was left. She left me with nothing. I looked at him, and for a moment, I did not see my son. I saw that little boy who used to cry when he fell off his bike, who ran to me with scraped knees and called me his hero. That memory cut deeper than anger ever could. Son, I said quietly, you gave her everything, not just the money. You gave her your grandmother's trust, your mother's peace, your name. Now you are standing here empty-handed, asking me what to do next. He nodded, eyes full of tears. I don't know how to fix it, Ma. I don't know where to start. I felt a wave of pity, not the soft kind, but the kind that aches deep in your bones. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the yard. The sunlight fell across the old oak tree Mama planted the year I had him. You start, I said slowly, by remembering who raised you. You start by earning back what you lost. Not the money, but your soul. You go out there and you work. You help others. You live honest again. That's how you fix it. He wiped his eyes, his voice trembling. Can I ever earn your forgiveness? I turned to him. Forgiveness isn't something you earn, child. It's something that grows, slow, like spring after a long winter. But you have to give it reason to grow. He nodded, and for a long time we just stood there in silence. Henry came in later that evening, carrying some documents. I talked to the lawyer, he said. We can recover part of the funds, maybe not all, but the court will freeze her accounts once the complaint's filed. My son swallowed hard. Do it, he said. I'll sign whatever I need to. I want to make it right. Henry gave him a long, searching look, then nodded. It's about time. When they left that night, I sat by the window again. The street lights glowed soft outside, and the wind rustled the branches of the oak tree. I thought about how life turns, how love becomes loss, how pride becomes punishment, and I realized judgment doesn't always come from the law or from heaven. Sometimes it comes from the quiet inside your own house. The silence between two people who used to trust each other died in that silence. My son would face his punishment every day, not in prison, but in memory. Every meal, every holiday, every time he saw me look at him, he would remember the day he took his mother's dignity and handed it to someone who never loved him back. Weeks passed. The case went through. Henry kept me updated. Some money came back. Not all, but enough for me to live with comfort again. I started cooking more, walking through the garden, watching the birds that came to the feeder Mama had nailed up years ago. Life moved, not forward, not back, just steady. One afternoon, I heard a knock again. When I opened the door, it was my son. He looked cleaner, calmer, but older. He handed me a small envelope. It's not much, he said, just something from the work I've been doing. I wanted to help. I took it in my hands. The weight of it was light, but the meaning was heavy. I looked at him and said, "Keep it, son. Use it to build yourself back. When you can give without guilt, then give." He nodded. Tears filled his eyes again. He whispered, "I'm sorry, Ma." This time, I reached out and placed my hand on his cheek. "I know," I said softly, "and that's enough for now." That night, as I sat by the window once more, I felt the peace that had been missing for so long. The house was quiet again, not from pain, but from rest. Mama used to say that truth is like medicine. It burns your throat going down, but it heals you from the inside if you let it. And as I watched the moon rise over the street, I whispered to myself, I let it. I will never forget what happened. The scar will stay, but I am still standing, still breathing. Still cooking in this kitchen that saw everything. The betrayal, the tears, the truth, and the forgiveness. And to anyone listening, anyone who has ever been betrayed by their own blood, I say this: do not let it turn you bitter. Let it turn you wise. Because love, even when it hurts, still teaches us who we are. And that, my dear, is the story of how I lost everything and somehow found myself again.